Okay, welcome to our first lesson about fractions. I can't necessarily promise to you that this is going to be um, your favorite thing that we do all year, but I can promise you that we do a lot of fun things with fractions, and that we will try to make this be kind of fun for you. So, we're starting off with a little book that you'll be creating with your notes. The book that you are going to be having, you should already have in front of you. I gave it to you when I gave you your little math checklist. It looks like this. It says My Fraction Book by, and you need to write your name in on that line. So this means that you have what you need in front of you at this time also. If you don't have your fractions book, a pencil, and obviously your iPad because you're watching this video, you need to make sure that you have those three things to be successful with this lesson today. So if you need to pause the video right now, go ahead and do that. Make sure that your name is written on your book with a pencil. You do not want to use a pen. It will go through the pages, and there's stuff on each page here, so you don't want to have your pen go through onto the next page. So using a pencil, write your name on the front. And this is a lesson where we are going to pretend that we are going to the grocery store in a little bit. But first, we need a little bit of a fractions introduction, which is what you're going to be using your book and this lesson for. Today, you're going to be going to the grocery store to find out how many times you really could use fractions in your day-to-day life. So, in real world situations, you are going to be finding out how many times you could actually use fractions. But first, we need to know, why are we doing this? Why do we need to know about fractions? Well, there are fractions in your day-to-day life, much more than you probably already recognize or know about. And we need to be sure that we understand what they mean and how we can use them correctly when needed. So more than any other lesson that we have done so far this year, this is one that you're really going to want to make sure that you have a good grasp on, because it's something that you really will use in your real life. For example, this one is a picture of a pizza. We don't usually get pizzas that are all different flavors like this, but this is a fraction. 1/8 of the pizza is Canadian bacon and pineapple. 2/8 of the pizza have pepperoni, this one and this one. That's just an example. I'll give you a lot more examples as we continue through this lesson, but that's why we need to understand this. Things as easy as, how much of a pizza should you put extra cheese on if you want extra cheese on it, but your friends don't? That's the kind of thing that we're talking about here. So, for this lesson, after you watch this video, you're going to get to kind of travel around the grocery store, which we are going to be having as the classroom. Each spot, I have a typo here. It says has a video. There's not, but there is a question for you to answer at each spot. As you're going through the grocery store, you're going to write your answer on the answer sheet that I also gave you when I gave you your checklist. When you finish, you're going to bring me your answer sheet and we'll check it for your understanding. This will be the start of chapter 9. That's another typo. Oh my goodness. So, first things first, we need to know, what is a fraction? What do you think is a fraction? Well, I think that a lot of you think of things like 1/2, maybe 1/3, maybe 2/5. I think a lot of you, when you think of a fraction, you think of an example of what a fraction actually is. And what I would like you to do is use this as the definition for a fraction. So the definition for a fraction, you're going to actually write on the very front of your little book that you have. This is the front cover. You haven't turned any pages yet. You are going to write that a fraction is equal parts of a whole. That's all that it is. So the example on that slide is 1/4 So you see this here is 1/4. So in your book, on the cover, you're writing that a fraction is equal parts of a whole. That's going to come in handy down the road when we start looking at fractions on a number line today, when we start adding fractions in the next week or so. And so you need to make sure that you have that. So if you have not yet, you can pause this video. You can write down what a fraction is on the cover of your book, and then you can turn the page to the next page. All right, now that you are on the next page in your little book here, we're going to think about equal parts of a whole a little bit more. So you're not writing anything in your book yet. I just want to explain this equal parts of a whole thing a little bit more. So on this slide, I have a bunch of pictures right over here. And those pictures, the pictures over here, each one is a different shape, I know that. But within the rows, there are examples of them that are equal parts of a whole, and there are examples that are not equal parts of a whole. This one right here that my pointer is on, this one is an example of equal parts of a whole. Because if I were to cut this down the middle and stack these two on top of each other, they are exactly the same size. When I go to this one, if I were to do that, or just by looking at it, I can tell that this piece right here is a lot smaller than this one. I would not be able to use this line to cut this circle in half in order to show equal parts of a whole. Same with this one. This piece is a lot bigger than these two pieces. And then in the fourth one, we have 4 pieces, which is different than these 2 or 3, but they are all equal parts. So this has equal parts of a whole, and so does the last one, but these middle 2 do not. So what I want you to do right now is just look through the next row right here where my pointer is and think which ones are equal parts of a whole. Which ones have equal parts of the whole? And the ones that have equal parts of the whole are the first 3 and not the last one. So all 4 of these are the same size. These 2 are the same size. These 4 are the same size. These 3, this one's a lot bigger than these 2. Now look at the next row, the triangles, and figure out which one is equal parts of a whole. Only one of those has equal parts of a whole. And the one that does is the first one. So this one is our equal parts of a whole one. If we cut it in half or fold it on top of itself, they're all the same size. When I look at the fourth row, I'm looking for which ones are equal parts of a whole again. And the only one that's not is this middle one. So this one's cut straight down the middle, and while this one's cut into thirds, they are equal parts. So the next slide, I accidentally clicked to it already, but the next slide is going to have you answering the first question on your assignment page. So you're actually getting one question done from your assignment already. So if you could turn to that assignment page that you have in front of you, it's the one with all the little squares on it. This is you're going to answer this on question number 1. Now, with this question, if you were told to answer the black question, that is right here, from here to here. This part is the black question. If you were told to answer the black question and the red question on your checklist, then you'll answer this first and then your red one. So question number 1 is, this glass of water is filled up part of the way. The rectangles represent the equal parts. So this part right here, this line is where it's filled up to. So I have 1 section filled with water, 2 sections filled with water. And I want to know how many equal parts of the glass of water are filled. Well, there are 2 parts of the water that are filled. 2 parts of the glass are filled. So all that you need to write down for question number 1 is how many parts of the water are filled. You're not even writing this as a fraction yet, you're just writing the whole number. How many parts are filled? Then for the red one, it says what fraction of the glass is not filled with water. Even if I didn't tell you to do the red one, you can still answer this question if you know it, which you should. How many parts of this glass are not filled? Well, obviously it's filled with air, but it's not filled with water. It says not filled with water. So the top one is the one that is not filled with water. So this is your top one. Okay, once you have that written down, you can push play and you can move on to the next question in the video. When I said next question, I actually meant the next slide in the video. So now, in your book, the first thing that we are going to do on those first 2 pages is we are going to define the parts of a fraction. Now, you might already know these things, but I'm really going to encourage you to wait to write anything in your book until I tell you what to write down, just because I would really like us all to have the same common language as we move forward through this unit. This unit gets pretty complex pretty quick, so we need to start out on the same page. And you need to do what we are working on. So you might already know what parts we include in a fraction or what those parts are called. If you don't know, I'll give you a hint. Take a peek at those pages when you first open up your book, and that's going to tell you what they are. Those parts are your numerator and then another word called your denominator. We're going to talk about the numerator first. So we're on the top half of that page when you first open up your little book. And the first thing that we are going to do is we are going to define a numerator. So anything that's in green in my book on the screen, you are going to write in your book. So define the numerator. Well, the numerator is the top number in a fraction that tells us how many parts we have. That's kind of interesting. So it is, a lot of us know that the numerator is the top number. That doesn't shock a lot of you, the top number. But the part that I think is interesting is that it is the part that tells us how many parts we have. So it's not talking about the whole, it's telling us about how many parts we have. So what I want you to do is circle all of the numerators in these fractions below. So in these fractions that are listed, practice circling the numerators. This won't take you very long. You're probably doing it already as I'm talking. If not, you can pause the video and do it. When you push play, you'll see that I've already started circling mine. In 5/8, 5's the numerator. In 6/9, 6 is the numerator. In 1/4, 1 is the numerator. In 1/2, 1 is the numerator. Again, the numerator is the top number. The 2 in 2/10 is the numerator. The 3 in 3/6 is the numerator. And the 4 in 4/6 is the numerator. When you are done with those, you will write the fraction shown by each picture. Okay? So now what we're doing is we are going to look at these pictures right here and we're going to write these as a fraction. You're probably thinking, I know how to do this, or you're thinking, you haven't even talked about how to write a fraction. I'm going to help you out here with this first one. When we're writing a fraction, we're looking at how many parts of this are shaded in. We're not looking at the white ones. For the top number, we're looking at how many of these parts are shaded in. Well, there's 1, 2, 3 parts shaded in. These are all of equal size. And out of the total, there are 1, 2, 3, 4 parts. So my fraction would have 3 on the top and 4 on the bottom because there are 3 parts out of 4. So it would look like this if you type yours in Schoology, which you're not right now on this assignment today, but eventually you will be. You would type in the number 3 and then that slash that looks like the one that I have right here, and then your 4. Now write the fraction for this one. You're right. That is 1, whoopsies, that's a typo, 1 1/3. It should be 1/3. I'll fix it right now. 1/3. There we go. Sorry about that. So you have 1/3 there because 1's colored in out of 3. Now, that's the numerator. Some people remember that the numerator is on the top because they know that north is on the top. If you know north, south, east, and west, north is on the top. Some people also remember that numerator is on the top, because the denominator is on the bottom. And some people remember that the denominator is on the bottom because denominator and down both start with a D. Some other people that I know think about it as North Dakota, the state. And if you think about North Dakota, north comes before Dakota, so North N goes on top. Dakota, D denominator, goes down on the bottom. Okay, so now that we're on the denominator page in your book, you are going to write down this definition for the denominator while I read it. The denominator is the bottom number in a fraction that tells us the total number of parts. So the numerator told us the part of the parts, and the denominator tells us the total number of the parts. When you finish writing this, if you haven't yet, you can pause the video, but when you finish writing it, you will circle the denominator, the bottom number in each of these fractions. Go ahead, pause the video to do that. When you come back, I will have all of mine circled as well. So go ahead and check yours. Make sure that you have the correct thing on there. And then here is our next step. Now we're writing a fraction again, shown by this picture. So in the fraction here for the first one, we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 total parts. So 8's going to be my denominator. My top number is the number of parts that are shaded in, which is 7. So my fraction is 7/8. 7/8, because 7 out of 8 parts are shaded in. For the next one, write that quickly on your own. There are 2 parts shaded in out of 6, so this would be 2/6, which is, whoopsies, oh my goodness, I have another typo there. I wrote 2/8, 2/6, 2 out of 6. Okay. That's my denominator. Hopefully I'm done with typos here. And to see them together, we have the numerator on the top. That's the number of parts that we have. And then we have our denominator, which is our total parts in the whole, or of the whole. We also can think about fractions as dividing. So this is something that you do not need to write down right now, but it is something that you need to be aware of. So if we have 2/3 as a fraction, it's the same thing as 2 divided by 3. 2 out of 3, 2 divided by 3. If we have 5/8 as the fraction, it is the same thing as 5 divided by 8. And same thing with 9 out of 10, or 9/10. It is also 9 divided by 10. So the top number is the first number when you divide. The bottom number is the second number when you divide. Just something to be aware of as you move forward in case you have any questions that ask you about that. Now, the next page in your book says fraction at the top. And with this fraction one, it says label the numerator and the denominator. So that's the first thing that we are going to do. We are going to label the numerator and the denominator. So you have them spelled correctly right here. Make sure that you are checking your spelling when you write them. This is your notes. You don't want to make a mistake and then do it wrong when you have a question about it. Write numerator and denominator, or numerator and denominator, wherever you remember that they belong correctly. So pause the video while you get that written down. Okay, you should have numerator on the top, remember north on top, numerator on top, denominator down, or North Dakota, top and bottom right there. And now we're going to look over here. Which picture correctly represents 2/3? Well, when I look at this picture, yes, there are 3 parts. And yes, there are 2 that are white. But they are not cut evenly. These are not even parts. So this first one is not representing 2/3. When I look at the next picture, there's a circle, and it's cut into 4 parts. There are 3 parts that are white, but there are not 4. And 4 should be how many total there are, which would be my denominator, my bottom number. That's not correct either. When I look at this one, there are 2 parts that are purple and 3 parts total. That's correct, but they are not equal parts. So this one cannot be a fraction because they're not cut evenly right now with the way that those lines are. So it has to be the last one, and that's because there are 2 that are purple out of 3, but they are all cut evenly. That's the important part here to notice, that these are all cut evenly. That's why it represents a fraction, aside from the fact that it is also shaded in with 2 parts out of 3 being colored in. Now what you are going to do is draw your own fraction. So you're going to start out by drawing 1/3. Not just writing the number, but drawing an example like this one that represents 1/3. So pause the video, draw an example of 1/3, where 1 part is colored in out of 3. My example, I used a circle. This one, you could have used a rectangle, you could have used a lot of different things, as long as all of your parts are cut evenly. That is the most important thing here. So 1/3, 1 of my parts is colored in out of all 3 of my parts. That is 1/3 as a fraction. Then I have 5/6, 5/6 as a fraction. And draw that picture however you choose to represent it. I chose to do that with a hexagon, and 5/6 of my parts on there are not colored in. So I did mine a little bit different. You could have 5/6 of yours colored in, or you should have 5/6 of yours colored in on there. And then the third one is 3/8. Draw a picture of 3/8. Think about this in real life. A pizza cut up into 8 parts, and 3 of the 8 parts are gone. That means 3/8 of the pizza have been eaten. Or, to look at it on a circle, 3/8 are green in that image. So again, the pizza is a nice little real life reminder to us about fractions. All right, moving on here. You have your second question. So now you're flipping back to your assignment page, the one with all the little squares. This is question number 2 for you. Write a fraction describing the picture below. So that's your first step. If you are doing the black question, or if you're doing the red question, you should also answer the black question. So write a fraction describing the picture below and label the numerator and the denominator. So you're answering this question by writing the fraction of the part that's colored in. So there's 1 part colored in out of how many parts? And then in your fraction, draw an arrow to what the numerator is, and then draw an arrow to what the denominator is. If you are also doing the red question, you'll answer the black question and then describe, why does it matter which number I put where? Why can't I put 1/4, or why can't I put 4 over 1? Or why isn't 1/4 equal to 4/1? That's what you're describing, is why does it matter which number you put where in a fraction? Why can't you just put the denominator on the top and the numerator on the bottom? Why does it matter? If you only had to do the black question, then keep on moving. If you had to answer the red one, then make sure that you answer that question before you continue on with the video. Now in your books, you need to be open to the page that says whole. So this whole time we've been talking about the parts of a whole. Well, what does it mean if something is a whole? Well, a whole, an example of a whole is 1/1, or 3/3, or 4/4. Where the top number is the same as the bottom number in the fraction, you have one whole. So in this picture, which shape shows us one whole? Circle the shape that shows us one whole. Which one has all of the parts colored in? Not that one. I was testing you. It's not that one. It is this one. The one that has all parts colored in out of the whole is this hexagon right here. Okay? Not one whole, not just one, but it has the whole thing colored in. Now, your next thing that you are going to be doing is you are going to draw an equivalent fraction below. So right here in this box, you are going to draw your own version. It does not need to be a hexagon. It could be a circle cut in half and you color both sides. It could be a rectangle cut into 4 parts and then you color both in. The thing that matters is that all of your pieces are cut evenly and that you have all of the pieces there shaded in. So draw an equivalent fraction. Go ahead and pause the video while you do that if you have not finished it yet. And here is my equivalent fraction. My equivalent fraction is 4/4. I had a circle or an oval. I cut it into 4 even parts and I shaded in all 4 of the parts. So far we are representing our fractions with the numbers like 1/1 or 4/4 or 2/3. But we can also represent our fractions not just with pictures and with numbers, but also on a number line. Now, the first thing you're going to do is label this number line. We're going to label the first little dash mark on it with a 0. And the last dash mark that they give you, you're going to label with a 1. This means that anything that we put between 0 and 1 is actually less than 1. So we're showing on a number line that the numbers that we're using are actually less than 1 with these fractions. However, with the whole, 1 whole, that's the same thing as 1. So any number where it's 3/3 or 4/4 or 100/100, that is still equal to 1. So no matter what it is as the fraction, if it's the same number on the top as the bottom, then it is a whole and it is equal to 1. Just the number 1. When we count 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, it is the number 1, the first number. All right, now we're going to talk about halves. And while we were still talking about our number line there, I would like you to add your 0 to the beginning of this number line on the halves page. Add your 1 to the end of your number line on your halves page. And when we have halves, it's out of 2 parts. So we need to cut our number line so that we have 2 equal parts. Well, the 2 equal parts, the first equal part is from this line to right here. And the second equal part is from this part to right here. So this dot that I have on here is 1 part out of 2, because if I were to draw a rectangle right here, it's 1 part out of 2, or there's 1 line in out of 2. Now this says 2 out of 2, that is the same thing you know as 1, the whole number 1. So if you know on a number line that halves are 2 parts in a number line, well, which one of these things do you think shows you 1/2? This one was our whole, so we know it's not that in the picture. It is indeed this one. Now, yes, there are more than 2 boxes, but when you look at the shaded in part out of the entire rectangle, it's like cutting the rectangle in half the long way, and it is 1/2 of the rectangle. When you write 1/2 as a fraction, this is what it should look like, 1/2 or 1/2 with that dash line. And then you're going to draw your fraction right here that shows a half. So go ahead and draw your fraction that shows the half. 1/2. I am using my real life examples here in my pictures because it's kind of fun to do, and I know that you're probably drawing with shapes and I want to spice it up a little bit for you. So I put a little picture here of a cookie that's cut in half. So there are 2 parts, and I'm going to take one and I'm going to give one to Mrs. Bowen. And so we each get 1/2 of the cookie. All right, you don't have to turn your page actually. The next page that we are going to talk about is thirds. Start out as we have on the last 2 pages by looking at and by circling which one is 1/3. And the one that is 1/3 is this part right here. We would write 1/3 out as 1/3. Now you get to draw your own equivalent fraction. You can do it in a rectangle. You can draw it in a circle. You have to be careful with circles with thirds. You could draw a box. You could draw 3 separate circles and color one of those in, because then 1/3 circles is colored in. Mine, I have this little picture here of some macaroons, and yes, there are 3, and yes, they are all the same, but I'm going to say that this is an equivalent fraction because they're all the same exact little macaroons. And I would say I get 1/3, Mrs. Shapee gets 1/3, and Mr. Borgen gets 1/3. And so there is 1/3 for each of us out of that stack of those macaroons. Now we need to split up our number line into thirds, and then we're going to label each part. So as we have already done on the ones before, we have 0 at the beginning of our number line. We have 1 at the end of our number line, which, since we're talking about thirds, 1 is the same thing as 3/3. So you should also be writing that. Remember, anything in green that I write, you are writing in your little book in front of you. And now I am drawing my lines to represent my third. So when I look at the sections here, I see only 2 lines. How can that be 3 parts? Well, I'm looking at from 0 to my first dash, which is 1/3, where that dot is, right here. And then over here to this line, which would be marked as 2/3. So I have 1/3 here and 2/3 here. The space in between them is cut evenly. And if I were to look at the chunks of them, since they're cut evenly, I have 1 part here, 2 parts here, and then 3 parts until I get to 1. The half I just kept there for you to kind of keep in perspective that 1/2 is bigger than 1/3 because there are only 2 halves and there are 3 thirds on the thirds page. All right. I want you to do this fourths page, the first 2 parts on your own. So the which shape shows 1/4, and then draw the equivalent fraction below. And then we'll do the number line together in just a second. So I want you to do the first 2 boxes on your own and then push play. All right, so I'm going to start out by telling you that fourths is written with 1 or whatever number it is out of 4, just like this. And which shape shows 1/4? This first circle right here shows us 1/4. Some of you may have circled this one because there are 1, 2, 3, 4 parts, but there are actually 3 of the 4 parts shaded in, so that does not represent 1/4. It would represent that 1/4 is not shaded in. Then you drew your equivalent fraction. Mine is a pizza, and I cut it into 4 parts. You could have done a variety of things as we've talked about. Now with this number line down here, I'm going to show it to you a little bit differently. I'm starting out with 1/2 as we did on all of them. So I cut my number line in half between 0 and 1. Make sure that you have these labels on your number line if you don't yet. And this time we're going to draw 4 equal rectangles between 0 and 1. So if you think about it as cutting it in half, and then cutting it from 0 to 1/2 in half, and then from 1/2 to 4/4 or 1 whole in half, you will get even parts with the 4/4. So then we are going to just draw a little darker line on top of those little rectangle lines where those rectangles meet, like I am right here with my green. The rectangles are used to help us think, oh, this really is in 1, 2, 3, 4 sections. That makes sense. My whole is made up of 4 parts, and I have 3 lines in between because that's just how I'm cutting up those whole parts. Number lines can get kind of tricky with the lines versus the boxes, so I like to start with those boxes up there first. And then to label our number line, we're going to put 1/4 on the first one, 2/4 on the second one, and 3/4 on the third one. Now we're going to move on to fifths. I know that, oh, no we're not. I'm wrong, sorry. Now you're doing question number 3 on your assignment. So question number 3 is, when you arrive at the grocery store to park, you look down 1 row to your right, and you see 1 parking spot that is, oh, it's supposed to say that is not filled, sorry. That is not filled out of 4. What fraction is this? So you see that you have 1 parking spot that is not filled out of 1, 2, 3, 4. Write down what fraction that is. And if you like a little challenge, or if you're supposed to do the red question, then you also need to write down what fraction of the parking spots are taken. That's on your assignment page in the little squares. Now I would like you to go back to your book. I would like you to work on this fifths page on your own. See if you can do all 3 parts on your own. Cut it into 5 even parts on your number line. Choose which one is 1/5, and then draw your picture below. So go ahead, pause the video to do this, and then push play, and we will check what you have. All right, so I put on here my answers for 1/5. I wrote it up here. I drew one, or I circled the 1/5. And for my equivalent fractions, I decided that I wanted to think about movies and how people rate movies and TV shows out of 5 stars. And something was really, really bad. It only got a 1-star rating here out of 5. So that my fraction here would be 1/5. And then we're splitting our number line into 5 even parts. This time you're going to see that 1/2 is right down the middle of one of my rectangles. You drew in your lines. You should have 4 lines between 0 and 1 with 5 parts in between there. As close as you could get to even parts. And we have 1/5, 2/5, 3/5, and 4/5. I'm going to skip the 6th, 7th, 10th pages, 6th, 7th, 8th, 9th, and 10th pages here on this video, and I'm going to tell you about what it is that I would like you to do after we do a couple more problems. So skip the 6th page right now and go to your assignment page, the rectangle page, and do question number 4. So question number 4 is right here. You enter the grocery store and you notice that the lights are on. There are 24 lights across the ceiling and 4 of them are burnt out. What fraction of the lights are burnt out? So for this, you do not need to simplify your answer, but if you do, it shouldn't be wrong. So you have 1, 2, 3, 4 lights burnt out of 24. So you would have your fraction as 4 out of 24. Or to simplify this, if you look at this picture, there's 1 row of lights burnt out of 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 rows of lights burnt out. And that's how you would simplify this. This is 1/6 of the lights are burnt out. The red question, for those of you that need to do that, says challenge yourself. What fraction of the lights are not burnt out? So go ahead and figure that out. You're writing your answers for those on your assignment sheet. And then question number 5 for your assignment sheet says, before you left your house, your mom said to get a variety of fruit for the fruit bowl at home. If you got 2 oranges and 7 pieces of fruit total, what fraction of the fruit is oranges? There's a little picture of a fruit bowl. It's not necessarily accurate with the numbers I chose for your question, so make sure that you use the numbers that I used in the problem. Write your fraction down for question number 5. And what fraction would you have if she told you to get twice as much fruit? So 2 times as much fruit. If you have to answer that red question, what fraction would you have if she told you to get twice as much fruit and you kept that same number of oranges and the same number of the rest of the fruit, but you just doubled both of them? When you finish question number 5, what you are going to do is you are going to do your 6th page on your own, your 8th page on your own, your 7th page on your own, your 9th, and your 10th page on your own. When you finish doing your 7th, 8th, 9th, 10th, and your 6th page on your own, this is what my 10th page looks like, you are going to bring me your notes page. To check that and your assignment questions that you already have done. That's your first step. So right now, you are going to finish those, you are going to finish those notes pages through the 10ths. The 10th section, you're not doing anything past the number line page in your notes packet. And then after I check this, you'll want to check back to this little reminder of what you're supposed to be doing. After After you bring me your notes to check that your assignment questions that you've already done, then you will finish the remainder of the assignment. It's not in your book. It's not on Schoology. You'll be walking around the classroom and answering the questions on your paper. So you're going to be walking around, filling in the rest of the squares on that paper for your grocery store assignment. When you finish, you are going to show me your answers and then make any necessary changes that you need to make to your assignment. If you have time when you're done, you will get to play Prodigy. I have some questions about fractions on there as well. If you have any questions, please be sure to ask along the way. I'll be around the room to help you all out. Good luck and great job with this. I know that was a long lesson. There was a lot to include. So good job and keep up the hard work.